Well, good morning, everybody. On this Friday, the 13th, 2025, I've got all your stories for your rush hour ride to work. Now, it's the summertime, folks. We like to mail it in on Fridays. No big stories. Let's just coast. Except we have a lot of heavy stuff to get into, like a potential start to a new war as Israel has preemptively bombed Iran. They've attacked them and wiped out several of their top military officials. Iran has said they're going to respond to Israel and possibly to U.S. assets. We'll get into that story as it continues to develop. Also, we've got some interesting stories out of the entertainment world as one of the Cyrus siblings has said that his ex-Hollywood pal faked a pregnancy and tumor. Sound familiar? I'll get into that. And more on this Indian plane crash as there has been a sole survivor and a harrowing story. We're going to talk about our big story of the day, which is a senator who was sacked at a Christine Noem press conference and the absolute gaslighting that has happened and revisionary history we're going to get into. So lots to talk about. It's a wild end of the week. Stick around. All these stories and more are happening right now on The Rush. Well, next week's going to be a busy week for me. I've got stand-up shows coming out in New York City. So if you want to catch me in New York, here, do this. Go to my new website, Rush Hour with Dave. If you click on rushhourwithdave.com and slide down, you'll see all of my content. And then at the bottom, you can add your email address. I'll let you know where I'll be for those shows. I'll be on the Upper West Side, East Village, and I think West Village as well. So stick around for that. All right, well, let's do an update on this really tragic story that happened yesterday, this flight from India that all the passengers died in an explosion except for one man. The story itself is absolutely wild. Here's the update.
If you thought someone surviving the plane crash in India was incredible, then wait until you hear the backstory, because the passenger wasn't booked into the seat that saved him. At some point before he got onto the flight, he switched to a window seat. Seat 11A, which was crucially nearer the emergency exit. So the plane came down, somehow he survived in that seat. He got out of the seat and left the emergency exit, jumped off the plane and walked away. He was the only survivor.
So what's so crazy about this is there's video of this man sort of like just disheveled and there's blood on him and he literally is walking out. And again, it's our thoughts and prayers to all the people that passed away, but this guy's got a story to tell. I mean, talk about a miracle for him. Well, here's some pop culture news. This was happening yesterday, Game 4 of the Stanley Cup. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift made an appearance. I got to tell you, being a famous person must suck for some reasons, but good for others. The best thing about being famous must be these seats that they get at these games. They get bottle service, they get chicken wings sent to them, they get cozier seats. And here is the moment where the camera found them at Game 4.
And sporting royalty arriving here at Amerant Bank Arena just a short while ago. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's right. They call them sporting royalty. And I have to say, her lipstick matches his shirt. Very good-looking couple. So just get married already. Here's the crazy story I wanted to share with you guys. Cyrus says that Brenda Song faked pregnancy and cancer diagnosis during our relationship. Now, who the hell is Cyrus? I guess it's one of the Cyrus kids. They pushed out a lot of these Cyrus kids. Brenda Song has kind of been a Nickelodeon star, right? Or maybe other kids' TV. Disney star, excuse me. So the son of Billy Ray and Tish Cyrus. So there they are. But here's what he had to say. It's absolutely bizarre. And of course, this coming after we found out Laura Owens faked cancer, ovarian cancer, and of course faked pregnancies. She's a lady that we, of course, helped the prosecutors charge her with 7 felonies. We'll have to see how that goes. Trial October 23rd. I'll be in Scottsdale, Arizona to cover it. But what's interesting about this, and they say, look, people that fake these types of things, they fake pregnancies and they fake cancers. Those are the two things they fake. Here was his response to somebody, just casually dropped this on Instagram. She stole thousands of dollars from me, faked multiple pregnancies, lied about being terminally ill to make my family and I think she had breast cancer and a brain tumor. It was all a lie. She was humiliated to ever show her face around my family again once we figured it out, and my mom confronted her, called her out on all of it. Thanks for reminding me of another scenario where I was a great loving person and someone did me wrong for no reason. Now, I don't know if this is true, but he's publicly sharing it. She faked an abortion with fake blood covering the bathroom floor, and my mom and I rushed her to the OBGYN. That's when all the lies started unraveling and we realized it was fake. Listen, people have disorders. People are crazy. There's crazy people out there. And I don't know the reasons why she did all of that, but listen, I think most people tell the truth, but when they don't, they fake pregnancies and cancers. I don't know. Kind of weird. All right, we got a lot to talk about in the political world, but I wanted to start with a good story. So a lot of times folks will say, oh, Dave, you're biased or you're this, you're that. Well, I wanted to share a play. This is from a few nights ago. They had the congressional baseball game, which I know they have bigger things to be worrying about. They can't even show up to vote on bills, but they can show up to play baseball. But here they are. They're playing at, I think, the National Stadium. Representative August Pfluger, a Republican of Texas, made an unreal double play during the congressional baseball game Wednesday night. I wanted to share it with you guys right here. So have a look at this.
And how about Augie? What a move there. Stab, dive, done.
And listen, I'll tell you what, I've never wanted to run for office, but as a guy who still can chuck it, I'm throwing in the mid-80s. I can throw 9 innings. I got a splitter, circle change, 2-seam fastball, and I got the hair to back it up. I'm here going to spot the corners. I hit you in the hip. I'm all over the map, right? I'm a funky pitcher. I belonged in the 70s with, a good handlebar mustache. Either way, I think I might run for Congress just so I can play in the game. Can we do that? Could we? Where could I run for Congress? Can we get me in a right district? Who's going to donate to my campaign? Not going to do it. Here's a big story, though. A judge has ruled that Trump illegally called up the National Guard. Will Trump listen to this judge and send them back? Now, of course, Donald Trump, the way it's supposed to work is, as a president, the governor of a state, governor of a state is essentially the president of that state, right? They're the top dog of that state. And the governor of the state is supposed to ask the president for the National Guard. In this case, Trump circumvented Gavin Newsome and wanted to install the National Guard. They're also doing it in Texas and other places. And it's kind of like a weird way to sort of centralize power more to the executive branch. And remember, Republicans used to say that they wanted small federal government, states' rights. Well, not anymore. They want to control you from the top.
Breaking news now concerning Governor Gavin Newsom's lawsuit against the Trump administration for the president's calling up of the National Guard without the governor's consent. That judge ruling that the thing that was done by the president was illegal. The deployment of the guard by the president illegal and violated the 10th Amendment and exceeded the president's statutory authority. He's put a restraining order on that. It will take effect on Friday at noon. And no response yet from the president. We are expecting that the governor may have something to say about this fairly.
So there it is. Gavin Newsom wins temporarily as the judge offers a restraining order, which means knock it off. He tells the president, knock it off or we'll turn this ship around. So again, we'll have to see what happens there. Now, coming up next, I'm going to share what was the biggest story of the day until Israel bombed Iran. And I'm not even saying if it was the right or wrong thing to do, to be quite honest, but we're just going to share the facts. We'll break that down. But first, Senator Alex Padilla handcuffed by FBI and detained briefly, albeit he was interrupted Secretary Newsome at an LA press briefing, and they just cuffed him real fast. This story next. Today's podcast is sponsored by Rula. Finding the right mental health care should be simple and affordable, but for many, it's not. Finding the right provider can make getting help feel overwhelming. That's where Rula comes in. Rula connects you with in-network licensed therapists that accept most major insurance. Their users typically have a copay of $15 per session, making therapy more accessible than ever before. From finding the right therapist to helping you schedule appointments and monitoring your progress, Rula is there to help. Join the thousands who have already turned to Rula for support on their journey to better mental health and well-being. Getting started is easy. Just visit Rula.com/rush hour today. When you sign up, they'll ask how you heard about them. Please support our show by letting them know we sent you. It's a simple way to help us while you take the first step towards the care you deserve. Go to RULA.com/rush hour now and connect with a licensed therapist who truly cares. Your mental health matters. It's absolutely wild. You've probably seen the video. I'm going to share with you not just the video of Senator Alex Padilla getting handcuffed, but I'm also going to share his response on Pod Save America and what Kristi Noem had to say. We are being gaslighted straight to our face. You know, gaslighting is such an overused word, but now I know what it actually means. And so we're going to get into that. But here's the moment that the senator introduced himself and said, I'm Senator Alex Padilla. And by the way, Kristi Noem is in a federal building in California. There's only 2 senators per state. I don't know if you guys knew how this worked, right? And he's kind of a big deal, senator, the governor, like there's only so many folks that you kind of need to know who they are. And especially if she's there doing these ICE raids, he's doing like oversight. He's saying, I want to know what's going on. And they're in a secure building. They've already been through security. He's actually walked into this room by National Guard and an FBI agent. He also has a shirt on that says U.S. Senator. And he says, hey, I'm U.S. Senator. I got a question. And they pick it up right at the moment. So clearly his, one of his, the people, that work with him started filming this as he was starting to get roughed around. Have a watch.
Guys, ready? And balancing. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex.
So this guy, right, this little Mighty Mouse over here, starts pushing him out. And what's crazy is Kristi Noem doesn't even stop talking. We've seen this in congressional oversight hearings where she'll be asked a question and then she'll just like sort of filibuster and keep talking. This Kristi Noem lady is bad news. She's the one who likes to do like Ice Barbie, where she'll dress up in the cute little outfits. And here she is in his home territory and has her sort of, mob bosses over here pushing the senator out. Now, at this point, he says, I'm a U.S. senator.
The secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your...
So he doesn't even get out what he's trying to say here. She's still talking like she's a robot, like they put a quarter in her and she's just still going on. And then he's removed from the room and you think, well, that would be it. No, he is put onto his knees and then onto the ground, really, as he's, and people will say, oh, he was resisting arrest, which is just hogwash. If you've ever had anyone just pushing you around, it's almost natural to act this way, especially when you represent the people. He is here on behalf of the people. And at this point, they put him down to the ground, and then the FBI agents tell the guy filming he's not allowed to film. Imagine if they didn't have this on camera. So pretty scary sight, and we're going to get different accounts of what actually went down here. And by the way, everyone has a take on it, but here's what Mayor Pete has to say.
Pete, like so many people around the country, I just saw something that made my stomach turn. Something I didn't think that I would see, even under this administration. A United States senator pushed to the ground and handcuffed after asking questions of a federal government official.
Hands behind your back.
All right, so then he shows the video, which we just had right there. And again, we saw, I think, a congresswoman out of maybe New Jersey.
To do about that. Well, first of all,
who was also arrested and charged with the crimes that could lead up to like 18 years in prison. So we're obviously not I'm not surprised we're seeing this happen. It's right out of the playbook, really, which is if anyone puts up a fight, rough them up and show them we're not afraid to do this. Now, again, this can lead to a banana republic type environment where everyone's arresting everyone. I'm sure people will say, well, this is coming after Biden's executive branch was using political force on the Republican Party. And it's like, well, where does it end? Where is the line? And of course, Pete Buttigieg here says, well, the line's been crossed.
First of all, we name what just happened, which is that the Trump government has crossed one of the reddest of red lines that can exist in a free society. Any salute to the flag or talk of patriotism or American greatness is completely hollow if you do not respect the freedoms that that flag represents, the Constitution that directs the course of this country. And they've shown what they think of those freedoms and that Constitution. Now what? Well, much will depend on the courage of members of the Senate and the House especially Republicans.
This is what it all comes down to, right? Republicans have control. Will they stand by their fellow Democratic senators and say, no, enough is enough? Or will they continue to sort of turn a blind eye? And what we're seeing is people are just rewriting the story of what actually happened. Again, here's Barbie ICE agent, Kristi Noem, kind of, sharing her side of things. She claims that he lunged at her. Again, they were in a secure federal building. He announced himself as the senator, and absolutely wild.
Had a great conversation, sat down, talked for 10, 15 minutes about operations in LA, some activities of the Department of Homeland Security. And so I thought it was very productive. And I wish that he would have reached out and identified himself and let us know who he was and that he wanted to talk. His approach, was something that I don't think was appropriate at all. But the conversation was great, and we're going to continue to communicate. We exchanged phone numbers, and we're going to continue to talk on ways we can communicate better.
Why was that the action you decided to take?
I'll let the law enforcement speak to how this situation was handled, but I will say that it's people need to identify themselves before they start lunging at people that during press conference.
Weird lady, right? She's a weird lady. I don't know about her, but clearly that's not what happened. Now, people are going to be in my DMs as they already are. Well, he shouldn't have done that, blah, 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 and it's like, gosh, the bootlicking, the absolute bootlicking, throw it out. Throw out Republican, Democrat. We have senators, we have congressmen and women, we have mayors that are getting roughed up when they try to do oversight, when they try to ask questions. Now, Senator Padilla says that they met and that she didn't say anything more than the talking points she was given. It's so bizarre, and yet here's his side of the story.
Part of this is going to be sort of a fact-checking, right?
And by the way, isn't this what's incredible with the news is that literally hours after this happened, he's already on a podcast. At least we still have transparency with the news out here.
And setting the record straight, because already the misinformation is coming from the Secretary in the Department of Homeland Security. So first of all, I was in the federal building in Los Angeles for a scheduled briefing with representatives from Northern Command, right? Part of the concern about what's been transpiring in Los Angeles last week is a continued escalation on behalf of the administration, right? No need for a National Guard. The mayor has said so. The governor has said so. Local law enforcement has said so. So what does Donald Trump do? Federalizes 2,000 National Guard troops and deploys them here. It takes a lot of work, a lot of coordination at the local level to try to get our arms around the, not the peaceful protests during the day, but the vandalism and graffiti, et cetera, at night, which, we denounce, has no place. It distracts from core messaging. And things are getting a little bit better each and every day. And so what does Donald Trump do? Now he's activating Marines. Since January 20th, frankly, we keep asking the administration, we keep asking departments for more information as to what they're doing, what the justification is. Finally get a scheduled briefing today at the federal building. So that's why I'm there. And like any secure federal building, you show up, you go through screening. Initially, I'm literally being escorted by a National Guards member and an FBI agent.
And by the way, as far as competency is concerned, be honest. Who do you believe more right now? This man who was thrown to the ground and handcuffed, or Kristi Noem? No, but be honest. What is, and people will say, well, they're just trying to put some spectacle together. No.
In a conference room, waiting for the briefing. There's chatter about a potential press conference because Secretary Noem's in town. Can't make this stuff up. Door to the conference room's open, and who do we see walking down the hall? The secretary and her detail. Surprise, surprise, they're having a press conference. And now our briefing is delayed because some of the people we expect to be talking to are in that press conference. So as we're waiting, I say, well, they haven't been responding to our inquiries and our letters. Maybe we go listen in and see if they have anything new to say. So I asked the folks that are escorting us, can we go listen into the press conference? They escort us over to the press conference. They open the door for me. I'm standing in the back, trying to listen. I don't want to get in front of the cameras or in front of the reporters. And, just the rhetoric is too much. Not the first time, but the second time they claim that Donald Trump and Secretary Noem is here to liberate the people of Los Angeles from the governor and from the mayor. That's when I spoke up.
So the idea that they're liberating Los Angeles, right? The mayor was elected by the people, and so was the governor. The governor multiple times, right? They had to do a secondary election after they wanted to challenge him. I think post-COVID. Either way, the point is, it's like you're not the boss of them. They've already got a structure. They don't need your help liberating them. But of course, that's part of the control they want. The authoritarianism is to have all the control coming from the top. Let's continue.
Speaker Johnson said your actions were, quote, wildly inappropriate and that you should be censured by the Senate. The White House press secretary said that you should be ashamed of your, quote, childish behavior today. What's your response to those comments? And what does it say about our politics in this moment that we can't just agree that a U.S. senator shouldn't be manhandled at a press conference?
Right. It's a sign of the times that we're living in. But I'm not going to back down. I'll continue to advocate as hard as I can, not just for the people of California, but the fundamental values that have built this nation. I'm taking my job seriously. So if Republicans in Congress, both the House and the Senate, Republican leaders in both the House and the Senate are so fearful of Donald Trump that they won't call out the truth for what it is. Look, it's all on video.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. It's all on video. And he's right. What he's trying to say is the Republican congressmen are acting like little bitches. Now, that's okay. So, I mean, that they all privately detest. I don't want to say they detest what's going on, but they're afraid that Elon Musk is going to primary them. They're afraid that they're going to be called out, and they're afraid, actually for their safety. They're afraid of what people in MAGA might do if they, go against the grain. So nobody's doing anything about this, at least on the Republican side, and they've got the majority. So here's Padilla having another interview.
We heard from you briefly at the press conference after you came outside of the federal building in Westwood. We've heard more extensively from Secretary Newsome and the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to just tell you a little bit, because I'm sure this has been a whirlwind, about what they've been saying. Secretary Newsome said that you, quote, lunged towards her at this press conference. The Department of Homeland Security said the Secret Service believed that you were an attacker. And the Department of Homeland Security called this political theater. What's your response and what's your version of what happened?
Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. It's a lie, but par for the course for this administration, right? So here's the stage. Look,
so then he gets into the same story of why he was there. But yeah, we've yet to see any footage of him lunging at anybody. And you know what the irony is here? Here's Kristi Noem, Barbie ICE, right? And here she's worried about people lunging at her when her ICE agents all over the country have been terrorizing people with their weapons out and their masks that they're wearing. And now this guy asks a question and it's like, oh boy, get him out of the way. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So I've been talking about Christianity in our country, and it's no knock on Christianity, but I've had people say, Dave, can you separate Christians from Christian nationalists? And, there obviously is a difference. There's a spectrum of belief where some people are that are Christian, or so to say most people that are Christian are good people, right? They live by the rules that, sort of govern their morality. And then there's others that they'll take that Christian nationality and they'll sort of ingest the toxicity that can come from the fearful rhetoric about, all of the border crisis and get the illegals out and things like that. And again, no real Christian should feel that way, right? So sadly, people have been activated to hate thy neighbor. You're supposed to love thy neighbor, not hate thy neighbor. Here is a word from Skeptic pastor named Jeremy. I'd love to have him on the show. He's a pastor who shares what actually was in the Bible.
The Bible is clear, shockingly clear, on how you are to treat immigrants. It says, love the foreigners, for you were foreigners in Egypt. That's Deuteronomy chapter 10. It says, do not mistreat or oppress the foreigner. That is Exodus chapter 22. And then, Jesus says, I was a stranger and you welcomed me in. I know that's not exactly directly about immigrants, but do you remember the story of the political leader who ordered the search for and killing of children? The edict that required Jesus and his family to flee political violence and immigrate to a foreign country? Yeah, that's Matthew chapter 2. And I know you're going to pull out Romans chapter 13 in the comments. Yes, it does say obey the authorities, but you have to remember that Paul was writing that while he was in prison. And the main point of that is that the authority and power needs to serve justice. It's not a blank check for tyranny.
There it is, not a blank check for tyranny. I love when someone who knows the Bible actually speaks about what the intention was, not sort of the way it was contorted to fit tyranny, really. So I wanted to share that with folks just to remember, because I get accused of I get called everything from I was atheist all the time, and I would say I'm far from an atheist. I believe in a higher being. I just don't exactly, and in this season of my life, fall into the sort of rigid confines of religion. It's like, sorry, religion, that's on you. Like you made it kind of like us versus them, and I'm all about equality and pulling people in. And to be quite honest, the way where I stand with this immigration issue, it's like, look, sure, we need to shore up our borders and do a better job of processing immigrants and logging people and making sure that everyone's accounted for and having a process to citizenship, or expelling people if they don't meet the requirements, or getting rid of the sort of any violent illegal absolutely. But when it comes to immigrants stealing our jobs, it's all fan fiction. The real issue is the billionaire class making all the money and not being taxed accordingly. They've used technology to suck up all the money from the middle class, and it's hard right now to buy a home. It's hard to feel like with inflation and all these other issues that it's like, people haven't really had a pay raise for decades. That's the real issue, not whether or not someone made it through here through an asylum process or illegally. We need to have more compassion. We need to have more grace. That's what I'm going to provide on my channel. That's all I talk about. Here's Bernie Sanders. Now, tomorrow is supposed to be a No Kings protest all across the country. And he says Dr. King defeated racist government officials and ended segregation through disciplined, nonviolent resistance. Defeating Trumpism, oligarchy, and authoritarianism requires that same level of discipline. Violent protests are counterproductive and play right into Trump's playbook. And that's exactly what they want. They basically are, chest up, walking into a bar, waiting for somebody to punch them so that they can just unload on them. So keep it nonviolent. Go out there and express your First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. Now, I had all this stuff planned, and then a wild thing happened. Now, I kind of record this podcast late into the night before the morning rush, and as I was actually at a stand-up show about to go on stage, I learned that Israel attacked Iran with strikes on nuclear and military sites. Here's the breaking news story.
We start with the breaking news at this hour as Israel has carried out strikes on Iran's nuclear program. The IDF has said, with blasts heard in Tehran. The strikes were part of Operation Rising Lion, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, adding Iran was a threat to Israel's very survival. Israel has declared a state of emergency, saying the country expected retaliation.
Yeah, that's wild, right? They know that Iran's going to retaliate. And quite frankly, I've seen reports that say they're going to retaliate on the United States, too. Our Secretary of State Rubio, Bootlicker Rubio, as we call him, he says, look, the U.S. had nothing to do with it. But few people believe that Netanyahu would order a strike without Trump's approval. So the question is, are we entering World War III? Seriously, that's the question. I don't have an answer to you. Netanyahu says that these preemptive strikes were important because Iran was getting close to having nuclear capabilities and they would be able to destroy millions of people. Is that true? I have no idea. There's one person I trust. His name's Ryan Grimm. He's the journalist that I've so far seen no cracks in his logic, and he says that Iran doesn't have that and that Netanyahu's been saying that for 20 years. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But really, and I don't say this too often, I want to send prayers to the Israeli people. I truly do, because I don't know if they want this from their government, but it's kind of like when the U.S. goes into war. When I was studying abroad in France, I remember seeing a graffiti that said, "Fuck Bush," which I was like, oh, interesting. They speak English. But what was interesting was that's when we were in a war that nobody wanted us to be in. And again, this is, for me, this was over about 20 years ago. Geez, I'm getting old. Or maybe just a little less than. Anyway, I didn't quite understand the sort of geopolitical conversation that was happening, because in the United States, we thought we were going to war because we were getting everyone back for 9/11. It was completely misplaced. I'm not saying that that's the case of what's going on here. I'm just saying there are plenty of good people, obviously, in Israel in the surrounding areas that want nothing to do with a war. Same with Iran. They want nothing to do with a war. What will happen if Iran counterstrikes to Israel or even the United States? Are we being sucked into a new $1 trillion war? I truly have no idea, but we'll be here to cover it. It's wild times. I'd be remiss if I didn't cover this and just wanted to tell you about Sydney Sweeney's new, bar of soap line she's selling. So it's fascinating. I want to give a shout out to Lisa, a new friend I made. Had a good conversation with her. She was, critical of some of my coverage of what's going on in the Middle East. And I'm all for people having healthy conversations. As I've told my audience, I want the same in return. Let's have grace, that we are knowing that we're all trying our best with the information we have. We're trying to get it right. And I always fancied myself as kind of somebody who will sit on the bus stop with you waiting for your ride to work. That's my job here. I am sitting shotgun with you. I won't get every news story right. I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm going to understand that if we criticize governments, we're not criticizing the people that live in those governments. So that's how I want to be treated with regard to my criticism of my government, and I want to be treated hopefully the same way when I criticize other governments, that we are trying to hold people to a standard we hope we could live in our current world, which is finding ways to promote peace, grace, love, laughter, have some humility in the process. And maybe I'll be that guy playing the violin as the Titanic goes down. I truly don't know, but I encourage you and appreciate you to continue to stick by my side. That's going to be it for me. I'll be back this afternoon to get to any stories we did not cover today. And so we'll see you then. Don't forget, if you want any updates on my stand-up comedy shows, go to rushhourwithdave.com, link in the description below, and you can sign up for the newsletter and see all of the other things I got going on over there. When you sign up for the newsletter, you'll actually get an exclusive video where I kind of explain to you the process of what I've got going on. So for free extra content, just sign up for that with your email. And we'll see you this afternoon. I'm Dave. This is The Rush.